Hello again everyone, my name is Derailious and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about Hypixel Skyblock going into 2026, my thoughts on the game, and how I actually feel like the game has a future again, which is a very exciting prospect. Before we begin though, make sure to like and subscribe, use code RAIL on the Hypixel store for 5% off your order, or if you're picking up Hytale, it really does help out a lot, and without any further ado, let's get started. To start off here, I want to answer the question, what do I mean when I say Skyblock has a future again? For the first few years of the game's existence, all the way around until 2022, I would say that the future of Skyblock was always going to be 1.0. It was talked about repeatedly, we got design documents, and we got a lot of information about what the game wanted to be. Many of those features were implemented into the game, stuff like museums, Skyblock levels, many other additions have been added over the years. But over time, it seemed like 1.0 was less and less of a possibility, and so a lot of people's focus shifted to stuff like the foraging update. The foraging update, though, by itself was not going to be enough to sustain a game as massive as Skyblock. It never was going to be, and even though a lot of people used it as motivation to continue playing, eventually we're going to see this brand new exciting content, it alone was not enough. And I think that's part of the reason the player numbers began to drop off. People felt like the game had no long-term future. However, recently, especially with the 2025 recap, I think we have a future for Skyblock again. And that future is modern content built in the newest version of Minecraft that is truly innovative rather than just continuing the trends of old. Recently, a large focus of the Hypixel network has been recreating skills that previously existed in a totally new way, or at the very least, announcing new exciting content in ways that we've never seen before. In terms of revamping skills, we've seen this already with stuff like fishing this year with the Backwater Bayou, which was an excellent update, added the hooks, lines, and sinkers system, the ship navigator, as well as all of those features related to your ship. I think it's a great step in the right direction, and a large focus going into the next year is going to be on fishing content. We're getting 2 fishing islands, the Lotus Atoll and the Desecrated Shrine, a whole island dedicated to the Guardian Slayer, which is going to be another piece of new innovative content, a combat piece of content that's also fishing related content. Excited to see how that plays out, but for now we're going to have to wait and see. I think we get a sneak peek of that in the beginning of next year. In terms of some other skills that were revamped this year, we basically got a full revamp for foraging, we got a whole new skill in the form of hunting, and then on top of that we got a bunch of content for farming, although the farming stuff is a little bit more divisive. However, I wanted to also bring up the fact that in terms of innovation, the game has definitely been changing, and the network announced a whole new game mode in the form of Ravengard, showing off everything they're able to do with modern 1.21 equivalent content. This is by itself very exciting, but it's even more interesting when you consider that they can port over or recreate a lot of those things that they've made for Ravengard into Skyblock, whether that be custom models, custom enemies, or even just blocks and things like that. By itself, that is exciting, but it's even more exciting when you consider some other possibilities. Notably, transfer packets in 1.21 allow for the creation of possibly EU or Australian servers. That's not a guarantee, it's not 100%, but it is now a possibility with the game moving over to the latest version in early 2026, which by the way, that's going to be a thing. You won't be able to log into Skyblock on 1.8 anymore, starting in early 2026, so keep that in mind, update your mods and all of that. This movement into 1.21 or modern content is going to be good for the game in my view. Not only is it going to allow the development team to finally go back to all of the older islands and older places and revamp and rebuild them, getting a new hub revamp, revamping places like the Gold Mine, the Deep Caverns, the Spider's Den again, and all of these other islands that have been kind of neglected over the years and giving them a facelift. That is going to be very positive for new and returning players, but it's also going to be extremely good for the team to streamline the game and continue to make it better, adding features possibly like chapters. I also know a lot of people have been talking about some content that wasn't included in the 2025 recap, for example the Great Glaciate Lake. I imagine that that is going to be converted into an update for the Dwarven Mines in 1.21. I feel like that's the most logical place to include it. They may have wanted to change around the update to include more of those modern features, which is entirely understandable. But all of this combined means that Skyblock actually has a long-term vision and goal. entirely move to the modern version of Minecraft, include all of those new features in the game, and have a game that's entirely updated and consistent. This also goes when it comes to new content. They've been talking a lot about new types of combat content, multiple new slayers for the next year, as well as new islands. Very excited to see all of that play out. I imagine the new type of combat content is going to be the very special place and time. That is the breach on the top of the rift, I am imagining. And I also imagine it's going to be some sort of either roguelike content, maybe some solo hard dungeon type content in there. I'm definitely excited to see what the team cooks up in that regard, but at the very least, we're getting something new, and I imagine that content is going to range in difficulty from around the mid-game level to maybe the late game, which is going to be good to see as well, as we've needed some sort of new end-game content for a little while now. For years, I think the Hypixel Skyblock team has been trying to decide what they want Skyblock to be. It's been between two worlds. The modern version of Minecraft or 1.8. Too grindy or not grindy enough. Too convoluted or too simple. I feel like we've gotten updates on both sides of the spectrum over the past 4 years. 2025 was the year where we saw some amount of consistency in terms of how the content is designed. Stuff like, for example, more RNG meters, the new pity system, reducing a lot of crop milestones in the greenhouse update, changing out a lot of content to be more streamlined. We've also seen more focus on interesting and new experiences in terms of the greenhouse update. The foraging update, I believe, did a good job of this, as well as the Diana V2 update, completely overhauling the fishing skill in the backwater bayou. Many of these changes all point in a direction where they're all in on innovation, new content in new versions, and focusing on trying to develop the game to be the biggest and best social MMO as possible. Personally, some people may disagree with this vision of the game, but in my view, at least they have a vision now. At least they have something clear-cut and defined that they can continue to push forward and push towards, rather than going back and forth and constantly having to rewrite the old systems and old game design. They can just make new things, which I think is going to be better in the long run for pretty much every single player. Even if you're somebody who likes, for example, a ton of grind, and you're not very happy about the recent changes, I think me and you can both agree that you'll be happier with a bunch of new endgame content in addition to what we have now, rather than the team spending another year just rewriting old systems again. I don't want that, you probably don't want that. We want to get to a place where the game is good, or at the very least good enough, and then beginning to add more to it, so we have more to do on a day-to-day basis. At least that's my thought process, and that's the thought process I imagine the team is undergoing as well, rewriting the old right now to make it as good as possible, and then focusing in the future on adding a bunch of new content. This year also brought with it the Dante V2 event, or the Aura event, which has allowed players to progress at the fastest pace we have probably ever seen in Skyblock. And the reception to this is very generally positive. The game has begun gaining players, something that was a struggle during the middle of the year, with a lot of people leaving after the admittedly pretty poor release of Terra Tier 5. Many of those players seem to have come back for the Aura event. I think in the long run, the game is going to have to decide how grindy it wants to be. I imagine that some of the things that are currently present in Aura could become permanent additions. Some skill rebalancing is possible, some RNG rebalancing is also possible. Players seem to enjoy this faster sense of progression. I imagine that's obviously because it's an exciting new event and all that, and we can't keep around these buffs literally forever with all of the additional buffs from the ministers, but at least a few of them can probably make it into the game in some permanent capacity, and maybe we can test out some other types of buffs and additions over a longer period of time, although I imagine some people may disagree with this. Leave your thoughts down below. Overall, I'm just really interested to see whether or not we're going to receive the major changes that I think the game needs, in the form of stuff like an equipment wardrobe, possibly European servers or Australian servers once the game is moved over to modern. Are we going to see a resource pack, a bunch of new pieces of combat content that bridge the gap between the mid-game and the end-game? Are we going to see a full combat rework? A year ago or 2 years ago, I would have told you that these things were impossible in the short term because the team was not innovating enough and modern was still very far off. The foraging update released this year. It was a great update. and it brought forth the new generation of Minecraft content to the Hypixel network. Now it's up to the team to prove that they're capable of bringing this over into the next year to the entirety of the game. And right now, I have just a little bit of faith that they're going to be able to do it. My name's Derailious. Leave your thoughts down below. I would love to hear all of them. Make sure to use code RAIL on the Hypixel store for 5% off your order, or if you're picking up Hytale, and I hope you have a wonderful 2026.